Just got done listening to the Eye of the Tiger. I feel ready for this end of the day review, Bones. I do. I feel ready. I'm ready to go. So as you can see, we got the homeowners with a 2.5 to 3% mortgage are trapped. Well, we're gonna play some fun stuff with this number. We're not even gonna directly play the satire and then the day review, but I almost got her worked out, right? I almost got that down to the whole. I haven't quite gone through all the pallets yet. I think I have, but I'm not quite sure that everything has been gone through. And there was apparently, Mike got a text message about one of the pallets had a couple of 74s in it that were supposed to be 72s, or they were something like that. I don't exactly remember. It very easily could have gone through. Me and Mike are still working out the process. Some kinks in there. I tossed my earmuffs today because I couldn't handle him. Well, that was part of the issue, but there was more about every time I got my hands on something, playing with the saw, playing with a torch or something, he comes over to me. And that's a big safety issue because, one, the way he approaches the situation, there's certain situations that you can. I'm sure I've done the rookie thing of walking up to him on the saw, programming, but I'm usually aware of it right then. And I'll try to avoid that situation or make a better call. Just stay out of the way until there's something, and then when there's a differential and load and block before you feel it out, that works fine. That you make that technique work for handing and unloading saws and loading saws. But again, usually I'm trying to keep her tight every night so I can come down to it. Right now I'm a little bit overhead. I didn't know how long it was really going to take the grind. I probably could do the switch over on the grinding blade, which we're gonna get all that. I like Mike operating the block and everything like that. That's like Veer or somebody. Usually, what was Steven, if not Steven, Donnie, or whoever was the big Sawyer Bob, or whoever they were running. And that's usually their sole devotion. Just stand there with the button, make sure she don't wad up, check the bottom limits. If you're cracking block, that table really doesn't do it. And that's your kind of sole devotion. Otherwise, jump over a saw and do things. But for us to get out in front on that, I think I would need to slow down and actually one man the operation into the yard. The system right now, as it is, I'll drag in and drag out, or have somebody else, or have Mike operate for me in that way if he's got a free hand, because that's way more efficient as far as the timelines of doing stuff and not doing stuff, or how we thresher that together of what would be consistent for that B-Rock until we run through enough of the cakes where we just load the saw solid through. Mike can jump back off. It'd take a half a year or a quarter to run something like that. And even if that's all the photon to the black body problem there, as far as safety analysis sheets and doing all that stuff, which Mike is theirs, and it's always that common gray here about what inflation is, or that percentage when you idealize the third degree burn on a master mason, or any house where you would have that type of 2.5 consistently is the civilian line against the military crest, or vice versa, because you're allowed to outage off of zero that way. And they become the walk speeds over at Arlington for the Tomb of Unknown. So Mason there. So when you do any of those, you got to fight the taper for what that is on walk speed, because this is physically a different structure. That's a one stone Arlington kind of walkthrough that they send a lot of people, which is a stone mill, and vice versa. Why everything's a tomb like that. Shimon satire, some of you grays get it, probably sick of hearing it like I am. But in that way, again, you got to come down. Really, I can separate and grade right there as far as pattern cutouts. Is this a pattern operation or a tread operation? A lot of B-Rock out there before we... B-Rock, before we get out there and really say if it's possible to do something like that, or if it's done. Once it's done, it's done. All the money that was there, that somebody was planning for an 8 or 10 hour day, much longer, is still contributed to that initial frame rate into quarters. How people break it down is all the crazy from there, the IRC policy gap. Your holdings, your strategics, it is a portfolio, but it's not a portfolio. And you're passively catching on things like rungs on the ladder for educational timelines and doing it up, so that they raise on this ladder that gets them to a triangulation at a point, right? Because then that time equity of the skid steer $2,500, right, or any new vehicle or something like that, to really pay that off. Let's say, with their bag of holding, which is going to be usually what the boss is most: pot, cigarettes, drinking, hanging out, any the bag of holding, that's in it for the cost. If we chose to add up those values that way, or consistently say that they make routes like that, would be $200 a week times 12 is 2,400. 2,400 times 10 years gets you the 2,400 that you need. But that's a hell of a long haul unless you're going to do it for credit, which sometimes is a kick in the teeth. If anything, the payment systems are all the same, and that's where that work and everything's a ball wave comes into the nature of things when you're thinking about how that plays out. Yeah, there's some pumps. And Mike got that message, not me, and I wasn't really mad about any kind of. All right, a couple of them got into the installer that they're going to chop off anyways, kind of thing, or they might even sort it down there because the footages are all wrong. There's plenty enough room up there as far as somebody driving with the skid steer, which I'm only tapping just a touch of it with the bar, and they come up to come fuel it a bunch, plenty of times between the operations. So I'm not worried about that. Where else we living inside of here? So I've seen the full yards, 3-footers to everything, because they're worth the cut. Unless we made the decision that pattern from 2-footers, 3-footers, or 4-foot treads would have been that number. And it seems like, and I can't not listen to the stories Mike tells me as far as what it is. I'm a sharps guy. Anything away from the floor evaluation on product or load and saw or training timelines is really, really hard on me. I'm out there in the woods most of the time, even if you're not out in the woods. And then kind of for the boss, because I got a lot of that on my mind lately here. It's just getting it out. This is the machine. That's what you get with evaluations of PPRA, camera in the process. There's all the passive stuff. It usually is the disclosure waivers that you got to sign. But let's be honest, they're non-binding by most standards because of safety incidents, or it could have been under question. And the only way to really evaluate the situation is to not have this black screen here. So,
joining us now, real estate investor Tom Shapiro of GTIS Partners. Tom, great to have you on the show.
Back to the total bag of holdings.
Home builders have been kind of leading the
right
charge
now I'm at $300
recently in terms of trying to fill the void with single-family home inventory. When you hear numbers like that from Lennar, I wonder what you think about the state of housing, given the fact that we have had the Fed, pausing today, but we've had this huge tightening cycle up until today.
And a carton of cigarettes, which is $60.
Yeah, it is
a bag of pot, which is $40 for a quarter.
What our numbers look like,
that you break it down, it's 14 grams or something like that.
Because
or 7
intuitively you'd think
3.5 is an 8, 7 is, so that gives me a gram a day. And there's no reason $40 you can't do the math.
But if I look back,
but boss, that's the piece of equipment you've done, which you really could have. It's a homeowner.
During COVID, it spiked up to 6 as people needed shelter and were looking for homes.
There's only so many
and then
reds and greens
it dropped
out there.
Precipitously to about 3
they still track back
year.
to where it's coming
so that's
from.
What's sort of in the
and masonry
Today,
is so hard. It's not corn. It's not home building. It's maybe a piece you send to a home builder.
So
or
we are seeing a huge surge as well. And why is that? I think there are 2 main reasons why that's happening. One, there's just no supply, and that is because if you finance your home with a 2.5% or 3% mortgage, you are now trapped in that home. You're not selling that home and swapping it for a 7% mortgage.
The team over there, they're making problems over here, but was it on the line? Was it?
Home mortgages down to 6% and below, and I think that's sort of a magic number for the consumers, getting down to 6%. So when you have to factor in when we talk about
12
home
hours,
prices,
16 hours
what
a
are the
day
concessions
in the
that
frame rate for the 4 he's got on the back end, and what do you do with that? He's going to have to sleep.
One statistic I think is really interesting is that historically,
they don't care. He's in the woods with 2 people out there in the middle of the woods, other than the breakfast sandwich lady I see in the morning.
Today, it's 30%. And again, that's got a lot to do with the fact that there's just no supply in these markets. There's nothing available.
Salty being that issue, which I bring it back to him. Which fundamentals am I missing, Salty? Tell me what's Salty.
Okay, so what does that mean for you in terms of real estate investing in the housing market? I mean, we know rentals have been red hot. The home builders, the publicly traded home builders, they're all up double-digit percentages this year. Where would you be putting money to work?
Rat nest.
Yeah, so we like the home building sector a lot, and we've been heavily investing in it. A lot of what we've been doing is more on the credit side, but we also been investing equity in home building communities. We're seeing, and what's really shocking is our entry-level home building We have a venture with a group called
That's
Casa
probably
Fresca.
should be some RN's housing unit thing that really isn't ours anyways.
But they've been extremely strong. We've had very, very strong sales. So we've been continuing to invest across our home building portfolio. Outside of
difference
housing,
in credit
really
is you
like
get a car and a house
as we
before you
continue
fully
to
pay
see
for it, because
a lot
you
of
never
demand
could.
as there's
And
more and
again,
more
I can't
onshoring
look
that's
at your
happening.
job without
You
the
can't
input
just
to
have
really
just-in-time
take a look
delivery
at it.
inventory anymore, as you need to make sure you have enough stuff in your warehouse in order to supply things. So
I hear you, Tom, but it sounds like it seems to me like we're in a unique
situation,
situation, especially when it comes to new homes.
What do you do in those places
Employment
that they work?
is uncommonly high.
You're
As you mentioned, existing home inventory is uncommonly low. We've had this rapid move higher in interest rates that gives home builders this opportunity to provide an incentive and raise their share of the home sale market to 30%. When that ticks down, isn't that going to hurt a lot of home builders?
So many free radiants.
For sure. But don't forget about the demographics. You have 1.2 million households being formed every year right now. Now, of course,
I think I'll find other things to do instead of process board to get that many blades going. I feel it's a problem ever before the boss came down and said something to me.
It's $1,000 more now to own a home than to rent a home. But I think post-COVID, and the fact, too, that people don't necessarily need to live in the cities because there's a lot of work from home, and the millennials now are getting to their late 30s, that's 86.5 million people. They are more and more wanting to be in homes, whether they rent them or own them. That's a different story. But they're making a lifestyle decision to be in a home.
3%
There's
is just
still a
gravity.
massive demand,
It's
no matter
a
how you look at it. People need to live
negative
somewhere.
2.0.
It's not like office. You
things.
don't have to have office space.
Kia, movement that inspires.